Is your retirement income prepared for decreasing interest rates? Lowering interest rates may seem good, but it's critical to make sure you're positioned correctly, especially if you're getting close to retirement or are currently in retirement. Hi, my name's Matthew Boersen, and I'm the managing partner at Straight Path Wealth Management. And today I want to talk to you about the changing interest rate environment, changing interest rate expectations, what it could mean for inflation, and what it could mean for your retirement, and some proactive steps to make sure that you're taking, that you're on the right path, and that your retirement will continue to be successful and happy. Many of this stems from some comments made by the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, over the last couple months, where he's changed his tune a little bit to interest rates. For a while, he's been very cautious to decrease interest rates for a number of reasons. But over the last couple months, he started to change his tune and become a little bit more positive to possibly dropping the Fed funds rate. And what dropping the Fed funds rate does is it typically lowers interest rates really across the board. It makes borrowing cheaper. And so again, while that may seem positive and that will probably be applauded on Wall Street, there are some things that maybe counteract some of those positives for retirees. And it especially can be bad in the long term for fixed income, because what it does is many times it decreases the interest rates, decreases the payments that you're available to receive by owning some bonds. Currently, the Fed funds rate has held steady between 4.25 and 4.5%. That's the target that Jerome Powell has set for the Federal Reserve. What this equates to in real terms for retirees is that the average money market rate, for instance, right now is 4.11%. And if interest rates decrease over the next couple of months, our expectation is that those money market rates will also decrease in lockstep. So if we get a 0.25 or 0.5% drop in the Fed funds rate, our expectation is that money market rates will absolutely drop below 4%. That also means that bonds, especially new bonds that you may be reinvesting into, will also have lower interest rates going forward. And really this creates kind of a few concerns, but also an opportunity for retirees and how to position your portfolios. First is we got to pay attention to inflation. One of the reasons that Jerome Powell has been cautious about decreasing interest rates over the last year or so has been because inflation has been a little higher than what he'd like. Inflation's been running somewhere between 2.7 and 3.1%, depending on which benchmark you look at. And inflation is a real number to retirees that can be really painful. If it's running around 3%, that's normally roughly in line with historical averages. But as soon as inflation gets up to 4, 5, 6, 7%, or numbers that we saw back in 2022, inflation can take away purchasing power very quickly from retirees. And so decreasing interest rates many times has a tendency to push up inflation just a little bit. As spending tends to go up, demand tends to go up. And so we want to keep a close eye on making sure that we're on the right side of the inflation argument and that our portfolios are positioned well for even if inflation's starting to show up, that we're positioned well where we'll just make more money in the portfolio to offset those higher costs. The other negative that could potentially show up is, again, interest rates dropping typically means less income being paid out of bonds and money market accounts going forward. And so for people, especially those transitioning to retirement and changing their portfolio makeup, investing in bonds that are now paying lower interest just means less spending. And so there is an opportunity sometimes for people to lock in higher interest rates for longer periods of times with bonds, something that we're looking actively at doing with our clients. One of the positives, though, is that many times the stock market or Wall Street responds positively to interest rate decreases. We've seen that even when Jerome Powell has hinted that they might decrease interest rates. And so making sure that we're positioned well from a stock market standpoint, that even if we're negatively affected slightly from inflation, negatively impacted by lowering interest rates, that the stock market exposure that we have is correctly positioned to benefit from an interest rate decrease will be important too. So a few things to kind of take in mind and maybe talk to your advisor about, or give us a call and we'll talk you through a few planning opportunities to make sure that you're on top of. Number one, to make sure that you evaluate your portfolio. Make sure that your portfolio is positioned for those pros and cons that I mentioned earlier, and that you have a balanced portfolio that's ready to take advantage no matter the market cycle. In particular, make sure that you're positioned okay if inflation starts to increase. There's several ways that you can kind of protect yourself against inflation inside your portfolio. You can use a certain type of federal bond that goes up as inflation goes up. You can use some stock market exposure and some positions that typically do well when inflation goes up. There's a number of different ways. Make sure that you talk to your advisor about the best way to be positioned. There's also the potential to ladder your bond portfolio. So having bonds that mature on a regular basis, but allows you to go out a little bit further many times in your bond purchasing, locking in higher interest rates for a longer period of time, and not making you overly susceptible to short-term interest rate changes. And then at the end of the day, just making sure that your investment decisions are data-driven. It's really tempting right now to let your emotion drive your investing decisions. There's a lot of political talk. There's a lot of projections out there, both good and bad, about what could happen. Making sure that you focus on the real data, making sure that you translate that into an effective strategy inside your portfolio is all really important to make sure that your retirement stays successful. And of course, if you have questions or want help in evaluating these different options inside your portfolio, please feel free to give me or someone on my team a call. We'd love to walk through and make sure that your retirement stays on the right path.